Distinguished delegates from SAARC member states and respected audience, good morning, and I welcome you all on behalf of SAARC Energy Center. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar on cross-border electricity trade in SAARC countries. SAARC Energy Center had already conducted a webinar on this topic in March this year. However, to emphasize its importance, we have planned a second session today. We shall be joined by Mr. Rajiv Ratna Panda from USAID South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy Integration at Integrated Research and Action for Development, and Dr. Yang Han from Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization. Mr. Rajiv will be talking about the current status of electricity trade in SAARC region, its future outlook, while Dr. Yang will be sharing with us this experience of electricity trade from China and Southeast Asia. Dear audience, before proceeding with the agenda, I would like to draw your attention towards certain things related to the webinar. Please note that the agenda of this webinar is already available on the SEC website, and you can also access it through the GoToWebinar panel on your screen in the handouts section. All presentations and a brief report on the webinar and webinar recording link will also be uploaded on SEC website. You can see the website link on your screens. Members of the audience can ask a question by typing the questions on the GoToWebinar panel under the questions tab. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect the questions and address them during the Q&A session at the end of each presentation. Due to time limitation, we apologize in advance if we are unable to address your question. At the end of the webinar, a feedback survey will be launched on your screens. Please do provide your comments, feedback, and suggestions using the survey. Dear audience, we now move to the first session of the webinar. Mr. Rajiv Ratna Panda will be presenting on cross-border electricity trade, current status and its future outlook. Mr. Rajiv Ratna Panda is an energy expert, electrical engineer, management, research, public policy and strategy professional with multi-regional energy system expertise and experience. He currently works as head technical USAID South Asia Regional Initiative for Energy Integration at Integrated Research and Action for Development. He provides technical inputs, advice, as well as the policy, regulatory, legal, market inputs, advice for enhancing cross-border energy trade, power system integration, transmission system and grid integration, regional power market design, development, and energy security in South Asia and BIMSTEC region. He has rich and diverse experience and expertise in policy design, regulatory harmonization, grid code, open access, trading license, regional investment policy, energy modeling, renewable energy grid integration, energy storage technologies, clean renewable energy transition, and energy market development. He was instrumental in developing regional regulatory guidelines for CBET, conceptualizing the development of regional regulatory and technical institutional mechanism for deepening energy cooperation in CBET, energy sector, public policy development in the SA and BIMSTEC region. He has been an avid reader and keen observer of energy cooperation and international relations in the South Asia and ASEAN region. His interests include understanding human endeavor for fundamental change in the cross-cutting area of energy, climate change, and sustainable development with the public policy focus. Welcome, Mr. Rajiv. Thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours. Please begin your presentation.
Thank you, Ahmad, and hello to everyone. It's a pleasure to be a part of this webinar. And what I plan to do in next 20 to 25 minutes is to focus on the cross-border electricity trade in SAARC region. What is the current status as far as the trade is concerned, and what kind of different emerging trends or outlooks that I foresee in coming future. And then also little bit talk about what are some of the activities that SAARC has been doing in this area rather quite some time since the year 2000. So let me directly jump into my presentation. I will be covering on these 6 topics, first focusing on what are the economic growth and integration prospects in South Asia, then overview of South Asian power sector, then the current and future scenario of cross-border electricity trade, then the major topic is the outlook for CBET, where I will cover in 3-4 outlooks, then enablers for cross-border electricity trade and developing regional power market, and some of the SAARC initiatives and way forward. Well, if you talk about the overall economic scenario in South Asia, well, this is one of the most populous region in the world. Something around 23% of world populations resides in this particular region. And in terms of the size of the economies, if we put the region together as one block, this will be something around 3.66 trillion US dollar, and it could be 5th largest economy in the world. So quite a sizable economy as compared to many other large economies in the world. This growth rate has been one of the fastest in the world in the recent past, and going in future, it is also continued to remain one of the fastest growing region in the world. And very interestingly, even after the COVID-19, where most of the countries will see a negative growth rate, you could see that the South Asia will continue to remain as one of the highest growing region, even in the time of this COVID-19, and will register a positive growth rate, whereas many other regions will actually post a negative growth rate. However, despite this economic growth and has been over the years, the integration, the economic integration in South Asia is one of the, I think probably the lowest in the world, in the sense that almost all other regions in the world has much more level of economic integration. The intra-regional trade share between the particular region has been very significant in Europe or even in ASEAN countries, whereas in case of South Asia, it is just around 5.6%, whereas ASEAN could be around 23.3%. So I just thought to give a background in the context in which this region is placed as compared to other regions. Then speaking a little bit on the power sector, I mean the whole power sector of South Asia, it is quite an interesting power sector as a whole, in the sense that it has a combination of very large power systems like power systems of India, and then very small power systems like power system of Afghanistan, which could be something around just 0.6 gigawatts domestic capacity, whereas India could be around 380 gigawatts. And then we also have this sort of a mid-sized power system, in the sense that Bangladesh is around 23 gigawatt of power system, and then Pakistan is of course around 39 gigawatt of power system. So we have a mix of small, large, and mid-sized power systems. And as I mentioned about the economic growth is also reflected in terms of the rapid capacity addition that we saw, and the capacity addition has been increasing significantly over the years from roughly 190 gigawatts in the year 2010 to something around 443 gigawatts in the year 2020. So there has been almost 2.3 times increase in the capacity additions. However, interestingly, the fuel mix is a very interesting one, because different countries depend on different type of fuel resources to meet their with their power productions. And Bangladesh, of course, relies on gas to a large extent of the power production, whereas India relies on coal, and increasingly renewable energy has been increasing significantly over the years, whereas Nepal and Bhutan are predominantly hydro-dominated power systems. Pakistan also depends on gas and oil resources. Countries like Maldives completely depend on oil and diesel kind of resources. So what it tells you that the region as a whole, the fossil fuel itself contributes around 63.6% of the capacity. So fossil fuel dominates the southeastern power sector, whereas hydro, RE will be around 20% and hydro could be around 15%. Despite this economic growth and rapid capacity additions in the recent past, the challenges continues to remain, as you can see that the per capita energy consumption is one of the lowest as compared to many other regions in the globe, and it's around 915 kilowatt hour per capita, whereas the world average is around 2600 kilowatt hour per capita. So in terms of sustainability, if you see, because sustainability is a major factor that will, going to be a major concern in going future. Most of the countries face significant challenges in meeting the affordable and clean energy goals, and this is indicators of the sustainability ranking, which reports on the sustainable development goals, and you can see many of the countries, face tremendous challenges in this area in terms of meeting clean energy and supplying affordable energy. So this is the kind of power sector we are talking about, and this is the kind of economic profile that we are talking about. I just thought to mention this before we jump into the cross-border trade subject, because that is the background in which I am going to make this talk on the cross-border trade. Well, the cross-border trade, again in line with the kind of growth perspective, the cross-border electricity trade has been increasing significantly over the years since the year 2012, and it has almost reached around 3,700 megawatts, and in the year 2012 it was around 1,400 megawatts. Now it has reached around 3,700 megawatts, almost 2.6 times, and same also reflected in terms of energy terms. And a lot of rapid expansion is being envisaged between different countries, and it is expected that by 2030, 43.8 gigawatt of cross-border interconnection capacity is like to come up. It could be something around 5,000 roughly in the current scenario. So a large volume of trade is expected to happen in this particular region. So just keeping those subjects in the background, I will talk about the outlooks and the emerging trends that I see. It's all there. It was also there. It's all there in some sense, but I kind of foresee that this is going to take a little bit more significant steps, if you like, in coming future. So I'll talk about 4 key areas. The first trend and outlook I will talk about is moving from a bilateral to a trilateral kind of power trade, because most of the power trade has been bilateral in nature. Then, the CBET not just about trade, but also about renewable energy-based power trade. Then, on outlook 3, I will talk about the commercial form of CBET, not just the government-to-government deals that happens between countries. And then talk about the regional power market development and market integration. And then I'll go one by one on each of these topics. So talking about the transition from bilateral to trilateral. Before I do that, I just to make a simple explanation. If you look at different power systems across the globe and how they have integrated, you could see some of these kind of patterns, and which is also similar to what patterns that we are observing in South Asia. So what happens initially? What happens? There is bilateral connection. So one or two countries start trading among each other. Then slowly, what they do, they start forming trilateral, quadrilateral connections between the countries. Some sort of a trilateral market comes into existence, and then before it becomes a regional market, sub-regional markets gets created among the region, and then of course eventually all the sub-regional markets gets integrated, and there is a kind of a common market in place. And currently, South Asia is making some effort to move from bilateral to trilateral mode of power trade. Just to give an example, Bangladesh plans to import around roughly 4 gigawatts from Bhutan and Nepal. Of course, it will be through India because of the geographical locations. And the Bangladesh import from Nepal from the Upper Karnali has reached some stage in the sense that the price negotiation has been concluded between Bangladesh and Nepal, and the discussion on for the transmission aspects, for that power to be pulled through Indian systems. There are also plans about building a 1125 megawatt of Darjeeling projects in Bhutan. It could sell power to Bangladesh, and the DPR for this project has been approved by the government of Bhutan. And there is also another project on Myanmar project of 404 megawatts, which hopes to sell power both to India and Bangladesh. Then I'll talk about the renewable energy accessibility, because there is a tremendous focus on renewable energy, and the cross-border electricity trade will also have that kind of implications going in future. Now, before I do that, many people must be knowing it, and this basically tells you that the power sector's contributions to the fossil CO2 emissions in most of the South Asian countries is a major share. Nepal, Bhutan, of course, have a relatively less amount of power sector's contribution to the fossil fuel emissions, but most of the other countries or large countries in South Asia, the power sector contributes significantly. Therefore, it is very crucial to decarbonize the power sector as we go forward, because we begin to see very devastating impacts of environment and climate change, and the power sector needs to decarbonize in that context. And in that context, fortunately, region may not need to look outside of the region, in the sense that there is a lot of potential available inside the region, and hydropower itself contributes around, the potential is around 350 gigawatt of hydro potential, and hardly much of it is developed. Only 18% of the total potential has been developed, and that offers a great potential to actually exploit the resources inside the South Asian region. If you talk about solar and wind, so there are vast amount of resources on solar and wind. There are something around 900 gigawatt of solar potential is available, and roughly only 3.8% has been developed. And similarly, wind is 967 gigawatts of potential, and only 4% has been developed. So there is a lot of potential inside the region, and this either the potential are exploited regionally, it can lead to large-scale clean energy transition and sustainability, and eventually helps in enhancing the energy security in the region. Just to give an example, that it is not only about the CO2 emissions, but it is also about the cost optimizations. And this is a recent work by NREL, which calculates that if Bangladesh wants to import around, let's say, 1 gigawatt of solar from state of Tamil Nadu in India, the solar and wind from India, then it puts, in case of wind, 1 gigawatt of wind import from Tamil Nadu, it can actually reduce the annual production cost of Bangladesh by 9.5%. Very, very significant. And similarly, in case of solar, it can reduce the annual production cost by 3.9%. And of course, if you import from Nepal, the production cost can reduce by 14.9%. And it also leads to significant reduction in emissions. In case of wind, it will be reduced by 5.5%. In case of solar, it will reduce by 2.5%. And in case of hydro, it will reduce by 9.7%. So it's a pretty significant cost reduction as well as emission reduction. Both are going to happen. Similarly, if you think of Sri Lanka importing renewable energy from Tamil Nadu state of India, because the Sri Lanka's cost of production is on a very higher side, so it will see something around 21% reduction in the annual production cost, which is very, very significant if Sri Lanka plans for importing 1 gigawatt of wind power from Tamil Nadu. So again, it leads not only to the emission reduction, but also leads to cost saving and cost optimization, thereby improving the energy affordability and sustainability. I'll just very briefly mention that since we're talking about renewable energy, India has come up with this rather a grand vision and initiative of one sun, one grid. And very briefly, the idea was announced in the year 2018, and basic concept is that sun never sets. So globally, so at any given point of time, there is solar energy available, and if we build transmission interconnections between the countries and the region, it can provide seamless interconnection of the RE for mutual benefit and global sustainability. It also envisages large-scale regional and trans-regional cross-border transmission interconnections. And if you look at the solar tariff that is getting discovered in India, India has seen one of the lowest solar tariff discovery in the world, I would say. And recently, the bid has seen the tariff is around just 2.36 rupees per kilowatt hour, which is roughly around 3.18 cents per kilowatt hour. So with that kind of low tariff, you could also optimize in case of transmission, in the sense that since the power cost is relatively economical, so even if the transmission is relatively high, so overall it could be a win-win and profitable propositions. In phase 1, it aims to connect the Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, and in the phase 2, it aims to connect with African power pools and, of course, globe at a large going in future. Then I'll talk about the Outlook 3, which I call the commercial form of CBDT. Now, if you look at the cross-border trade in South Asia, predominantly it was started between the governments, and it's all negotiated tariffs. So governments used to negotiate the tariff on which power is to be traded. And over the years, slowly, the commercial form of CBDT has been increasing. Currently, roughly around, let's say, 1,200 megawatt of CBDT happens on the commercial form of CBDT. And it brings business values, and it leads to competitions and better price discovery. And to me, more importantly, it kind of makes a mindset change, in the sense that it will help going in future to transit to a market form of CBDT. And the current commercial CBDT is something around 33% as compared with the total trade. The fourth outlook, I'll talk about the regional power market and power market integration. Now, you know that different countries have different demand profiles. Daily, weekly, monthly, the demand varies among countries. And in this context, Power Exchange offers a very fair, transparent, and neutral platform for power trading. It also helps in competitive price discovery. We have done work on these areas, and we have found that if you go for multi-level trade, the capex could be reduced by $17 billion in the BBN countries. We also did pilot exercise where we found that the quantum of MCV could be increased in the range of 5 to 7% if BBN countries start trading among each other. And I also believe that the new power market initiative in India also offers an opportunity to leapfrog on the cross-border front. And the market is not only about the power trade as such, it also can be useful for regional balancing. We all know that many countries in the South Asia are having envisaging for a lot of renewable energy capacity additions. And CBDT can actually act as a tool for managing flexibility and the intermittency that you face when you go for RE integrations. And the successful 9P and 9E been also demonstrating in some sense that the flexibility can be achieved from outside of the region, and though it's not directly linked to balancing as such, but it kind of tells you that balancing can happen in regional sense, and we're working on developing some regional market in that area. Just to give an example, in the year 2016 in Denmark, 80% of the Denmark's wind generation was balanced through CBET by utilization of the Norway hydro resources. So it's not only about the power trade, but also about regional grid balancing and creating sort of balancing market. So what are some of the enablers for developing this market? Now, I'll talk about political, regulatory, technical, and institutional. Of course, on the political side, you need to have a political vision and some sort of consensus in these areas. And I believe that there has to be some sort of market mechanism, some sort of implementation mechanism also to enable some of these aspects. On the regulatory side, some basic things like open access, identification and transmission capabilities, how do you measure the imbalance and settlement? Some of these things need to be in place. Some countries already have, and some countries need to work on these areas. Of course, the harmonization, bid code, transmission pricing, coordinating regional planning. These are some of the things that needs to be put in place if we want to go for a regional kind of market. And on institutional side, regional forums, I believe, is essential, and it will foster sustainability going in the future. These are some of the key policy enablers. I don't want to get into in detail. There are many others also, but basically it tells you that over the years, countries are making steps in this regard to enhance policy and regulatory frameworks in the region. And India has come up with this cross-border trade of electricity regulations, and it is a first of kind dedicated regulation on cross-border trade and comprehensively addresses the aspect of CBET. It provides clarity, transparency, and consistency. And in my view, it almost addresses almost all aspects of regulatory aspect of CBET one could think of. Very briefly on the SAARC initiatives, we have been working in this area for a long time. The program started in the year 2000, and we have seen roughly 2 decades of experiences in this particular area. It also tells that how complex and how difficult to move forward in South Asia, but there has been tremendous progress in last few years. So some of the things that we are working on is to harmonize legal policy frameworks and also developing a sort of a common regulatory roadmap for CBET. Working on developing a regional generation and transmission master plan, and also a model framework for trilateral and multilateral power trade. We're also developing common minimum grid code, which will help the harmonization of the grid codes. Also the power exchange platform for CBET and the framework for ancillary services market. We're also looking into the gas trade potential, not just only electricity, but also how natural gas can be traded among the countries, and also trying to create a very analytical, vibrant South Asia energy resource database. I will emphasize on one other aspect that we are, really focusing on institutionalization of the process of CBET, because we believe that the institutions needs to take care of various issues, and in this regard, we are working on South Asia Forum of Electricity Regulators. We are already providing support to SAFIR Working Group, SAARC Council of Export of Energy Regulators. Then on the transmission side, South Asia Forum of Transmission Utilities. On the system operator side, South Asian Forum of Transmission System Operators. On the market side, South Asia Forum of Electricity Market, and also on the investment side, the South Asia Forum of Energy Investments. In conclusion, and way forward, I will summarize my presentation. What I believe is that it is very crucial that every country develops complementary regulatory frameworks for CBET. So, of course, India has come up with its own regulations, and let's say open access and other key ingredients. I think the other countries also need to develop their own regulations on some of these aspects, so that it is much easier for regulatory and policy organization. It is also important to strengthen the process of regulatory and policy harmonization, and I think some more work needs to be done in that regard. I think focus should be also on the implementation of the agreements. We have seen a lot of agreements has been signed, but I think the focus should be on implementation of some of the agreements. That's why I also mentioned that some sort of implementation mechanisms and review of some of these agreements also need to be conducted, so that there is a kind of review mechanism that what is happening, what is not happening, what are some of the areas where things more work is to be done. I mentioned about the transmission planning. The regional transmission plan is very crucial. Once it kind of helps you to provide a kind of it gives a message for the investors that this is the kind of number of lines going to come up and so on and so forth. It is also important to focus on de-risking of cross-border infrastructures, because the cross-border power projects and transmission lines do have added risk as compared to a domestic project. So specific de-risking instruments needs to be developed so that the bankability of these projects has increased, and also helps in mobilizations of the investment. Also, as I mentioned, focus on developing markets and including ancillary services. These are some of the things that will help. In fact, as you keep on integrating more and more RE and RE become a mainstream, so to speak, some of these things become very, very crucial. Institutionalizing the process of CBT, I just mentioned in the previous slide, so that's of course one of the very important aspects. And CBT is not only about the cost optimizations and sharing of resources, but it also leads to clean energy transition and sustainability. So these are some of the things that we need to link cross-border trade, not just only about cost optimization, but the sustainability and other aspects that goes as a requirement for future, and there's a lot of effort in this area. And last but not the least, continues to strengthen the institutional capacities, because some of these things does require the capacity to be enhanced, and this capacity needs to be improved. And I'll stop my presentation, and I'll say that when I started working in this area in the 10 years back, and I was working on regulatory thing, and then I used to hear that well, there's no need to bring any regulations and so on and so forth. But things have changed, and though slowly, but things have changed. So I believe that with a collective effort and a shared vision, some of these things can be done and should be done for the benefit of the whole SAARC region. And I will end my presentation with the quote that it always seems impossible until it is done, as said by Nelson Mandela. So sometimes things look very difficult, and once it is done, then we just think that was so easy to do. So I will be on the optimistic side, and I hope that some of these measures, because this region deserves some of these things, and everything is almost available in this region, and if it's properly directed in a proper direction, the region can benefit immensely. Thank you very much for your kind attention. I'll be happy to have any and answer any questions or anything, comments, or engage in any detail. Thank you. Over to you, Madhu.
Thank you, Mr. Raja, for your comprehensive presentation. I think our audience must have benefited greatly from it. So we will now take a few questions that we have received from our audience. The first question is from Pakistan. The question is, are there any links between USAID and SAARC on official level? Like say links between SAARC Secretariat and USAID?
Okay, so we don't have any formal MOU kind of agreement, but what happens that because we have been doing this research for quite some time, so whenever they require any knowledge support and assistance. We provide them knowledge support and assistance based on the research work that we have done, and we have helped in conducting a few assignments for some sort of implementations of the SAARC framework agreement on energy cooperation. So in that regard, we have the associations with SAARC, and we share knowledge and experiences with SAARC Energy Center, and as a resource person between us. So that's all the linkage we have. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is also from Pakistan. So you talked about different, institutions, the SAFER, SAF-TV, SAFSO, SAFM, etc. The question is, do all these institutions make things more complex with regards to CBET in South Asian region? What's your opinion on that?
Okay, so let me answer this question with them giving an example. And that also help you to understand why I feel that institutions are crucial, and these institutions are some sort of forums, so they are not like supra regional bodies. They are most of the forums where people can discuss, deliberate, and settle some of the issues. When I started working, and as I mentioned in my talk also, that I was saying that there should be some regulatory framework should be put in place for cross-border trade, and I often heard from almost all stakeholders that why you would like to have a regulation in place, and it will make things more complicated, and so on and so forth. And well, that person has changed, and today the countries are making efforts to make regulations. So it is very crucial that we have well-established rules put in place for trade to happen. And in that context, the role of institution is very crucial, because if you don't have a some sort of structured institutional forums, then it for a long term. I mean, you are managing right now. I mean, nobody says that without this institution trade cannot happen. Of course, trade can happen, and trade is happening. But if you think from a long-term point of view, this kind of institution does help. In fact, even currently also, the kind of power trade that is happening, the system operators do coordinate among each other through their own channels and own line of communication, so to speak. So there is some sort of institutional mechanism also in place. And from international experiences, and as we see from the other regions, some of these institutions will help. And that is own challenges. I understand that, but certainly some of these institutions are crucial from a long-term point of view.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Bhutan. The question is, we understand that cross-border trade is taking place. However, what is holding back for the countries to participate in electricity exchange that only exist in India?
Right. So, okay. So, first of all, the trade in the electricity exchange has been allowed. I mean, in the in Indian exchanges. Of course, the conduct of business rule has to be finalized. That is yet to be finalized in that regard. I also like to say one thing. Maybe others may not be aware of that. See, a lot of market reform initiatives are happening in India, and in India also taking a lot of steps to deepen market inside India itself. And I can tell you that looking at the roadmap ahead, I see a lot of market-related instruments going to come in future in India, and these kind of reforms will also help, though indirectly, not directly, on the cross-border front. That's why I said it can leapfrog on the cross-border front. So, what I would say that the internal debate that is happening inside India on the power market aspects, of course, about India's power market, as soon as that kind of get resolved or kind of there is a particular direction in which it goes, I think some of these things will become much more easier. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from Pakistan again. Are there any interconnection connection standards by IAC, as security protocols are very important between countries to avoid theft?
Can you repeat? I could not theft. Theft in which? Can you repeat, Ahmed, once again?
Yeah. The question is, are there any interconnection standards by IAC as security protocol? Because it's basically talking about the security protocols related to the CBET. So the question is there any connection standards by IEC to avoid theft?
Theft, I am not sure about the theft as such, because I am not aware of the theft standards of IEC on the transmission aspect. I need to check on that. So I am not aware of the theft aspect, but there are connection standards, because I mean, without that, of course, things cannot happen. So I am not aware of the theft aspect. I need to look and get back to you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Bhutan. So the question is, India has policies and regulations already in place tuned to be fit for various power market options. What is your recommendations to other countries so that they can be part of it in total and not in piece?
Yeah. So it's very good. Sorry. Ahmed, are you saying something? Should I go ahead?
No. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay. So it's a very interesting question, and when I was talking about the balancing and others, it relates to that. See, there are market will have different type of instruments. So market doesn't mean just about trade, and as I mentioned that there are different type of instruments. Recently, you may be aware that India also started this RTM, which is called real-time market. So what I'm trying to say is that there are different type of market instruments, and for example, the countries like Bhutan, because the question is from Bhutan, you can think of how you can exploit the balancing aspect of the market. I mean, as more and more renewable energy comes into picture, there is a requirement for the balancing power, and because most of your resources is hydro resources, and if there is some amount of storage is available, you can actually provide balancing power, and that also on the market. That also tells you that when you develop your power projects, you must also keep that thing in mind. So you don't do only for the sale of electricity, but also as a balancing power. I mentioned about the case of Denmark and Norway. So Denmark, 80% of the wind production, because there is intermittency associated with the wind productions, and that are all balanced through by Norway's hydro, and of course it is all done in the market and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is that different kind of market instruments are going to come up, not just about the RTM, going in future derivative and so many other things that may come into picture. And therefore, you as a country can think of how you can tap some of these aspects, and not just about the electricity, but also like the balancing power and so on and so forth. So there is a plethora of combination that is going to be available, and of course, depending on the strengths of different countries and their the energy resources and fuel resources, it can have a have a value addition. You can actually extract a value out of it.
Thank you. The next question is from audience member from Nepal. The question is, given the regulatory framework in countries around India are weak, what are the low-hanging fruits that can be achieved in early stages of cross-border electricity trade?
Okay, so one of the Nepal has been increasing its imports to meet its demand, but as soon as the lot of projects. I believe a lot of projects have also come up. So one of the thing could be that, of course, one need to see because at the end of the day, in market, one has to be competitive, right? So what I would say the low-hanging fruit could be that once the business rules are finalized and the trade on exchange is also allowed, that could be one of the low-hanging fruit where one if Nepal has a surplus electricity, it can sell on the exchange, at least get some value out of it. That will, of course, one of the lowest hanging fruit, I would say. And of course, I mean, you have, because you can't just rely on let's say you are building a power project, so everything cannot be relied on the market as such. I mean, as of now, let's say. So you need to have other long-term contracts with prospective buyers. But on the exchange side, if that is allowed, it can actually help you to tap the India is a big market, so there are a lot of variation that happens in the market in the demand and supply, which also got reflected in the power market or the power exchanges. So that could be one of the low hanging fruit. I would say, yeah.
Okay, the next question is from Afghanistan. He is asking how would cross-border electricity trade stimulate hydropower development in South Asia?
Okay, a very good question. I mean, in fact, I alluded in my presentation. Again, it links to the renewable energy. So, as I mentioned, that let's say India, for example, it builds a lot of, is already building and going to build also more and more of RE, means I'm talking about wind and solar, let's say. Now, each wind and solar has a lot of intermittency aspects, and there is a requirement of balancing power. So, first of all, your hydro resources can be developed for CBD. That is one aspect. The second aspect is that the hydro is not only for just trade of electricity, but it's also for trading of the balancing power, and that actually where you can add more value to the hydropower. And we have seen in many other parts of the globe, in Europe and others, how the hydro is not just selling electricity, but also selling the balancing power, which gives you a kind of additional revenue to the hydropower, and thereby making hydropower much more commercially attractive and commercially viable. And it is also not about just the hydropower. Recently we did some work on the pumped storage, and we also looked at different pumped storage potential in South Asia. And so we could see there is something called off-river pumped storage, where you don't need to actually build reservoirs. You could find sites where there are two reservoirs nearby, and you can just connect these reservoirs and can have a pumped storage facilities. And we found a lot of potential available in South Asia for pumped storage also. Now, if a country is developing a lot of renewable energy, and some of these, hydro can also be developed, so that to provide balancing support. So, in that context, CBT actually helps not just to exploit the hydropower, but also to give additional value to the hydropower, in the sense that you operate like a balancing sources and eventually participate in the market. Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from India. He's asking, what is the time frame to establish cross-border energy exchange between India and Sri Lanka over HVDC? This scheme has been in discussion for several years, but no substantial movement is there. So, please share your opinion.
So I don't know the time frame, and if I today put a time frame, maybe after some years, somebody said that your time frame is not there. But what I would say that see, one thing that I noticed in case of India, Sri Lanka, is that you see, Sri Lanka also need to kind of take this view that Sri Lanka is a very nice country. I've been there for a number of times. And I also see that Sri Lanka moved into coal and other resources. But I personally believe that, such a beautiful, nice country, if you could develop, rely on more of renewable energy rather than the fossil fuel based, systems, I think that will be good for you as a country as a whole. And in that regard, the link, we need to put a value to the link in the sense that it is not only about the trade of electricity, but also about the sustainability and the greening aspect of that particular link. I think if that is the kind of metrics that we put to cross-border that link, HVDC link, I think it will become little bit more acceptable. And of course, there are alternative routes where now it is being talked that it can be developed not as a submarine cable, maybe some overhead line can also be built because there is less, the height of the water is not that, the depth of the water is not that high. But so I would say that put some additional value to the cross-border link, and that I think makes the thing much more easy and acceptable. And this is something one has to take a call on that. I just mentioned to you in my slide where you could see that slide. I don't know if I can go back to that slide where basically it says that if Sri Lanka wants to import around, let's say, 1 gigawatt of solar, 1 year wind, let's say, from the state of Tamil Nadu, with Sri Lanka's annual production cost can go down by 21%. That's quite significant because Sri Lanka, the cost is relatively high in the South Asia region. So I would say that the whole argument behind such links also need to have this kind of metrics in place, which will ultimately make it much more commercially attractive and commercially viable. Yeah.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions more.
Okay.
So the next question is from India. He's asking, the grid code harmonization is very important for cross-border electricity trade. So what's the progress on that front?
Okay, so in this regard, So in this regard, previously we did a detailed study on the grid code, and we come up with a grid code guideline on that. And then now what we have done, we have condensed that particular, because grid code, the harmonization could be in many levels. So you don't need to harmonize everything to begin with. You may harmonize some, rather basic things that you need for interconnection. So in this regard, we have developed something called a common minimum grid code. And this has been developed by us, and we have shared this with SAFIR, which is called South Asia Forum of Infrastructure Regulation, where the electricity regulatory, different countries regulatory authorities and commissions participate. And that has been, we have presented the draft also. And as a next step, a committee on the review of the grid code needs to be constituted, and then the process will, further process will happen. Of course, the COVID-19 came in between, and those processes got delayed. So that's the next step that will, once that committees are formed, then each committee will review that common minimum grid code, and eventually that will take some sort of finalization. So that's the kind of next step forward from our side. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Rajiv. The last question that I want to ask you is, this is the follow-up questions to the earlier question that I asked you about the role of the institutions. So the follow-up question is, what kind of coordination do you foresee? What kind of effective platform do you foresee for these institutions to coordinate with each other?
Okay, so platform. If he's talking about how this institution will function and operate, if that is the question, if I am understanding correctly. See,
sorry, the question is actually between the coordination between the different institutions. So what would be the most effective way to do that?
Okay, so different institution. Okay. So basically, the question is that how the regulator, transmission system operators, and utilities can coordinate. Okay, so that's not so. Even in a country also that happens quite frequently. Let's say let's say the grid codes are, let's say grid code an example. Let's say the grid code is issued by the regulators, but the process of development of grid code does takes into account the transmission utility and system operators. So if you see the way we are devising or conceptualizing some of these institutions is that, let's say it's a forum of system operators, but it will also have committees, where committees and subcommittees and working groups, which will also have the representations from the relevant areas. Let's say the system operators are talking about a particular subject, which also has a role of transmission utility, so they also become a member of those committees. And this is a very standard and well accepted principle, not just in many countries, even in the Europe and many other places. This is a very normal standard practice, so to speak. So through that kind of institutional setups, this kind of coordination will happen. And once some of these things are institutionalized, this become a routine exercise. So I kind of see that once this system is in place and the coordinations may not be, it becomes a routine coordination as it happens in any country and any part of the globe. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Raju, for joining us today, and thank you for taking your time out. I think it's been a wonderful and informative session for our audience. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Ahmad, and thank you for those questions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Dear audience, we must apologize for all the because due to time limitation, we will not be able to take all the questions, but we'll try our best to get them answered through email if possible. We now will move to the next session. We shall be joined by Mr. Jiang Han from Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization. Dr. Han Yang is a research fellow, is an IEEE member, is a secret member, is currently serving as a research fellow of GATECO, which is Global Energy Interconnection Development and Cooperation Organization. Prior to this, he has served as senior engineer of China Electrical Power Research Institute. He has been engaged in the fields of power research, planning, and operation for a long time, including the building of Central Simulation Center of SGCC, as well as in energy interconnection planning. He has hosted a series study on analysis and model of ultra-high voltage DC projects, clean energy-based development, and cross-border power interconnections in Southeast Asia, among which the project of large-scale solar and wind-based development of Northwest China has won the first prize of Award of Science and Technology Progress of CIPRI. He has held 7 patents and published over 40 articles, including IEEE Trans on Smart Grid and SIGLE conference. Welcome, Mr. Dr. Yang Han. The floor is yours. Please begin your presentation.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Dear ladies and gentlemen, friends, good morning. First of all, please allow me to express my sincere gratitude to the SAARC for the careful preparation for this meeting. I am Jiang Han. It is a great honor for me to share some research findings about the energy interconnection and trade. My talk covers 4 parts. First, I will introduce you some concepts of energy interconnection. The global sustainable development faces severe challenges such as climate change, resource scarcity, environmental pollution, health, and poverty. Countries have reached consensus on promoting energy transformation and taking the path of sustainable development to cope with the challenges. But feasible global solutions at the technical and economic levels have not been proposed anyway. Especially, the window for the mitigating climate change is narrowing day by day. It is an emergency to accelerate clean and low-carbon energy transition globally. To achieve the 2-degree and 1.5-degree temperature control target of the Paris Agreement, global carbon emissions should fall by at least 25% and 55% from current level in next decade. At present, the commitment of countries' intended nationally determined contributions is only 1/3 of the reductions required to achieve the 2-degree temperature control target. So the energy interconnection could provide systematic solution for addressing climate change and realizing sustainable development of world economy, society, and environment. The core of sustainable development lies on clean development. Building a global energy interconnection, that is GEI, provides a fundamental solution to promote global energy transition and accelerate clean energy development. GEI is a modern energy system steering towards clean energy production, widespread energy allocation, and electrification of energy consumption, as well as an important platform for large-scale development, transmission, utilization of clean energy resources at a global level. It will be an electrical-centered system. So when we call energy interconnection in the future, it means electricity power interconnection. So key concepts of GEI is 2 replacement, 1 increase, 1 restore, and 1 conversion. 2 replacement are to use clean alternatives in energy production, replacing fossil fuels with hydro, solar, and wind energy, known as clean replacement. And to promote electricity replacement in energy consumption, replacing coal, oil, natural gas, and wood with electricity. 1 increase is to improve electrification across all society sectors. At present, the rate of electricity consumption in global total final energy consumption is merely 19%. As the rate increased by every 1%, 720 million tons of coal equivalent will be saved, which is equivalent to the total primary energy consumption of Canada and Mexico in 2017. 1 restore refers to the restoration of fossil energy to its basic attribute as industrial raw material to create great value for economy and social development. The economic value generated by crude oil as a raw material is 1.6 times that of the value when used as fuels. 1 conversion means that carbon dioxide, water, and other substances will be converted to fossil fuels, will convert to fuels and raw materials like hydrogen, methane, by virtue of electricity to resolve the resource constraints and pave the way for sustainable development of mankind. GEI has been incorporated into the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, CEM, and China Arab State Cooperation Forum, and other multilateral international cooperation, becoming global consensus and common action. Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, said, "Global interconnectivity allows for inclusivity, for energy to reach everybody in need. GEI is in the center of the two central concepts of our commitment to Agenda 2030 and the key to combating climate change. To promote GEI, GADICO continue carry out multi-level, cross-sectoral, global, and comprehensive research, form an architectural research system to clear the path and promote joint action with partners all around the world. The presentation is part from the following research works. The first is energy interconnection in ASEAN, and second is Global Energy Interconnection Research Report Series. For the first one, GADICO, ASEAN Center for Energy, and the UN ESCAP built a relationship committed to strengthen sustainable energy interconnection across ASEAN, China, and surrounding areas. This joint research project on power grid interconnection has identified practical measures to substantially increase the penetration of clean energy. Its analysis provides firm foundations for achieving regional energy interconnection, and that means power interconnection, which also will promote sustainable development greatly. So in the second part, let's take a look at the current status of energy interconnection and trade in ASEAN and China at first. Then we will analyze the potential of energy trade among the regions in the future. Across our investigation, cross-border power trade of this area is at a modest level. In 2016, the power trade reached a total amount of 5.2 gigawatts, which is equivalent 2.5% of the total installed capacity 2015. In 2017, the power trade increased to 5.5 gigawatts, equivalent to approximately 2.7% of total installed capacity. ASEAN also has exchanged a cumulative 51.7 terawatt-hour electricity with Yunnan and Guangxi province in China by the end of 2017. But only 7 of the existing cross-border transmission lines are at the 500 kV level. The other transmission lines are 230 kV, 110 kV, and below. Obviously, the current capacity of interconnection is not enough for the future. Take ASEAN as an example. Drivers of interconnection and trade are as follows. First, the economy continues to grow rapidly. Recently, the economic grew at an average rate of 4.6%, nearly double the world's average. Second, the industrial structure is upgrading. Third, it has abundant clean energy resource. Energy interconnection and trade will also solve the challenges of sustainable development of this region. Firstly, fossil fuels are running out. According to the current situations of energy consumption and resource exploitation, the proven reserves of coal, oil, and natural gas in ASEAN can only last for about 62, 10, and 17 years, lower than the world average. Secondly, environmental issues become increasingly severe. Regional emission of pollution and carbon dioxide continue to grow, reaching 1.4 billion tons in 2015, which is 87% higher than that in 2000. And we still need to pay attention to that the geographic and temporal mismatch in energy demand and supply, currently limiting the use of clean energy resource. Considering the driver and benefits of the sustainable development, it needs to accelerate building energy interconnection. The general idea of it, or the concept of it, are as follows. First, coordinate development, clean energy, and power grid. Overall planning of power supply should be made, optimize generation allocation, promote intensive development of power supplies. Second, coordinate market and at supply and demand side. Coordinate, explore scale and local electricity demand at the supply side, and import scale and local generation at the demand side to ensure the electricity is transmittable and receivable. Third, coordinate regional and cross-regional interconnection. It is advised to accelerate the construction and development regional power grid, establish power grid interconnection among ASEAN, China, and surrounding areas to meet the needs of electricity complementary and expand the scope of clean energy consumption. So now let's take a look at the clean resource of ASEAN first. The solar irradiation intensity is 200 and 250 watts per square meter. The average wind speed in coastal area of Myanmar and Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines can reach 8 to 11 meters per second. Hydro energy resource is mainly distributed in Irrawaddy, Sarawak, Mekong, and Kalimantan. And also for South China, hydropower is a leading resource of power system. According our analysis, for the planning of installed generating capacity, 3 clean energy development scenarios are proposed. We can find the higher the share of clean energy, the higher the need of energy interconnection. The analysis showed that by 2050, clean energy generation under ADS scenario could be as high as 62% of the total power generation. The transboundary power transaction through energy interconnection will reach 10%, compared to today's lower than 3%. This provides a vision for what is possible in the region of the future. So the following study is carried out on the basis of ADS scenario. This slide introduces the potential of energy interconnection in the tree. So across the region, ASEAN, together with China and South Asia, will achieve multi-energy complementary and solve the seasonal variation of power supplies. Within ASEAN, the power is transmitted from north to south in Indochina Peninsula, and in the Malay archipelago, the power is transmitted from center to rim. In 2035, countries will preliminarily build a regional power grid through bilateral and multilateral interconnection. In 2050, the interconnection between ASEAN, China, Bangladesh, and other neighboring countries will make ASEAN possible to become an interconnection hub. And this will also bring additional benefits to ASEAN member states, such as economic benefits. The low PDR, the Myanmar could earn wheeling charges by transmitting power from China to other countries. In long term, these countries could also deliver power to China and countries in South Asia. And it could also improve the utilization rate of cross-border transmission lines. China could deliver power to Laos, PDR, and Myanmar during dry seasons, and to strengthen the capacity of Laos and Myanmar to sending stable export power to their neighbor countries whenever the climate is in wet or dry season. In the third part, I would like to introduce the outlook of the scheme of energy interconnection and trade. In 2035, the details of interconnection scheme are as follows. Across the regions, to the north, ASEAN connects with Yunnan, China, with 3 back-to-back DC projects. By constructing Yunnan and Ho Chi Minh DC transmission projects, the electricity demand in the South Vietnam will be met. To the west, it connects with South Asia by China, Myanmar, Bangladesh DC transmission projects. Within ASEAN, in the Indochina Peninsula, a 500 kV synchronized AC grid could be built, covering Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, and Thailand. And the Malay archipelago will form 3 synchronized power grids. In 2050, taking the different potential choice of technologies into consideration, such as UHV AC, UHV DC, 2 schemes are proposed within ASEAN. For the Indochina Peninsula, one option is that to constructing a 1000 kV ultra-high voltage backbone grid with 3 horizontal and 3 vertical corridors. This technology has been applied in China, and also India has done some tests for it. The other option is that constructing a 800 kV flexibility DC backbone grid with a structure of 2 loops could be formed in Myanmar, Laos, and Thailand. And for the Malay archipelago, 3 synchronized power grid will be maintained. Across the region, for ASEAN to China, the China-Laos 800 kV UHV DC transmission project and the China-Vietnam 660 kV UHV DC transmission project are proposed to exchange power with China. For ASEAN to South Asia, the Myanmar, India 800 kV UHV DC transmission line is proposed to send electricity to load center in central and eastern India. To have a better understanding of the feasibility of the energy interconnection, 2 recommended pilot projects are proposed. The first one is the China-Myanmar-Bangladesh interconnection project. This project uses 660 kV 3-terminal DC with a capacity of 4 GW. Its total length is 1,200 km. The converter station at the sending end in Baoshan, Yunnan, uses a conventional DC technology, and the converter station at the receiving end in Mandalay of Myanmar and Chittagong of Bangladesh use flexible HVDC technology. Myanmar receives 1 gigawatt of electricity. Bangladesh receives 3 gigawatts of electricity. In long term, it could be sending power from Myanmar to China and Bangladesh. The second one is the China-Vietnam Interconnection Project. The project uses 660 kV HVDC transmission with a capacity of 4 gigawatts and a total length of 1,600 kilometers. The sending end located at Yunnan, China, and the receiving end is in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. The project will meet the demand of electricity in the surrounding area of Ho Chi Minh in Vietnam. Now, the first part is the conclusion. Energy and Electricity Corporation is the core of the regional cooperation and clean development of this region. The key of cooperation is energy interconnection and trade. In specifically, the first emphasis should be laid on replacing the traditional energy development mode, relying on fossil fuel and local balance, by a new mode focusing on clean energy and wide area optimal allocation. Other important contents to ensure the energy security and sustainable development in the area include the construction of large-scale clean energy bases, the establishment of the strong interconnected grid, and the clean development and transmission in the countries. The planning is of great value and purpose and prospect, and its implementation is necessary for the region. To achieve that, the consensus must be reached among the stockholders, and their efforts must be concentrated on enhancing the policy-making coordination and improving the mechanism for bilateral and multilateral cooperation. To be specific, a regional electricity market should be built. Innovations should be made in investing and financing aspects, and the pilot project of grid interconnection and clean energy utilization should be implemented in the near future. So thanks for everyone. Let's make joint efforts for innovative development and create a beautiful future together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yang, for your presentation. So we now will take a few questions from the audience. The first question is from Pakistan. Would you kindly let us know 2 serious conflicts that you experienced in current energy trade agreements and how you handled these conflicts? What care should be done in energy trade agreements? Dr. Yang?
Yes. So, for now situation, the energy interconnection trade will solve several challenges for sustainable and development of this region. First of all, the fossil fuels is running out, and secondly, the environmental issues become increasingly severe. And we also need to handle the mismatch, the geographic and temporal of the energy demand and supply. So, we also have several agreements, such as China and Myanmar and Bangladesh already have started a working group to promote the China, Myanmar, Bangladesh projects. So I think if we can construct several working groups like the China, Myanmar, Bangladesh, so we can promote the power interconnection and to solve some conflicts of the agreement. Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next question is, you talked about one conversion on your energy interconnection slide. So can you please explain what are the future plans for one conversion?
Okay, yes, one conversion is, here. One conversion, it's a new idea, as we all know. I think it's begin with Europe or Japan. They will use the solar energy or wind energy to produce some new oils or gas to meet their demand. So now, in China, also have such kind of plans to, sometimes because of the fluctuations of new energy, it will not match the demand. So sometimes the price of the electricity will be very low. So at that time, we could use the electricity to produce some new oils, green oils from the carbon dioxide and the water. So also we do several research about it nowadays. So that's our vision. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is, considering that China, Myanmar, Bangladesh grid interconnection is on the table, has GIDCO carried out any study on grid interconnections between China, ASEAN, and South Asia?
Yes, actually, we have already released a report of the Asia energy interconnection. And late of this year, we will hold a Asia interconnection conference, and we will release a detailed planning research or study about how the China, Southeast Asia, and South Asia, how them make interconnection. And of course, and we already have some preliminary results. Lots of benefit will be achieved if these three areas have a good interconnection.
Okay. Thank you. Can you please provide any update on the timeline for this China, Myanmar, Bangladesh interconnection?
Some technical feasibility study has already been
Dr. Yang? Hello. Dear audience, thank you, Dr. Young, for joining us for today. Dear audience, experts for today emphasize on the importance of cross-border electricity trade and the offered benefits and shared the lessons learned from such trade in other regions. There exists a great potential of electricity trade in the SAARC region through conscious framework development. Through conscious efforts for framework development, sound policy, and regulatory harmonization and strengthening our institutions, we can make our future sustainable. We have now come to the end of our webinar. Please share your feedback using the survey at the end of the webinar. For any other comments and suggestions related to this webinar, please send an email to rft.org. I would like to thank my speakers for today once again for their informative presentations. We are also grateful to our audience for joining us today. I would like to reiterate that all materials relevant to this webinar will be available on SEC website. Please do provide us your feedback regarding the webinar through the feedback survey. Take care, stay safe, and goodbye.